So I'd like to talk to you briefly about expanding your comfort zone. What is our comfort zone? Well, it's that special place, our safe space that we've created for ourselves in our day-to-day operations. We've got, a typical situation where we wake up Monday morning, we have to force feed ourselves, we're off to the office, we have our lunch, we have our, afternoon break during our work cycle, and get off, go have your commute, get home, kick your feet up, watch some TV, enjoy your dinner, go about your interactions with your family, friends, and all that throughout the week, Monday through Friday. That's what happens. Friday comes around, you're excited because you have 2 days of freedom to do whatever you feel the need to do, get caught up on things, or just get ready for the next week. Well, what happens during that period, during these intervals, we find ways to make ourselves more comfortable in this scenario, in our day-to-day existence. We don't want to rock the boat too much. We don't want to shake up our social circle too much. We don't want to step out and make ourselves too uncomfortable by pursuing things that, we've probably given up on a long time ago. So we settle into this existence, what some people call a life of quiet desperation. And that's the comfort zone. A quick story. So while I was in the Army in 2004, I was deployed to Iraq for a year. I was a unit supply specialist, supply sergeant at the time. Deployed to Iraq, but because I was the chief logistician in my unit, I was in charge of getting the vehicles that for our unit sent back to the U.S. So during that month, I had to make those contacts. I had to coordinate this and that, go here, fill out this paperwork, get with the shipping yard and all that to make these coordinations. But what happens out there in the desert, one thing that, anybody that's been on deployment realizes that in the Middle East, temperatures are a lot more extreme over there. It's closer to the equator. The sun seems to be a little bit closer to that region. During that month in Kuwait, my experience, and even in Iraq, but what we had was trailers that we would live in. They were air conditioned. And if you've been there, what happens is like 7:15 in the morning, there are points where it's 92 degrees already as soon as you wake up. So 7 in the morning, you open that door to step outside, and it's pretty much the equivalent to when you open up the oven when you're cooking in the kitchen and that heat just comes in, hits you in your face. It's just like that. You open that door and it's like stepping out into an oven. And that's what I experienced. But in Kuwait, it got to 142 degrees. I was there in the month of August. 142, it maxed out one day. And I'm just sitting there looking at the sun like, how are you so close or so far away and yet you can cause this much heating from this place in the Middle East is 142, and then I pull out an app on my phone a few hours later, I'm looking in Tacoma and it's like 65. That huge fluctuation. I'm sitting there looking at the sun like, are you serious? 142. After 110, it's just hot, and it really doesn't even matter how much hotter it is. But what happened due to myself and those other soldiers being out in those extreme temperatures, when we got back to the States, there were points where it will be 85 degrees the next summer, and people were walking around saying that it's hot, and we're just like, yeah, okay. You know what I mean? We've experienced 142, and you're complaining about 85? Please stop. And that's because we got acclimated over there. Our threshold for those extreme temperatures was pushed absolutely beyond the limit of anyone surrounding us that hadn't been in those temperatures. So people complain about 85 and wanting to pass out, and they don't know what to do with themselves, and I'm walking around like, this isn't so bad at all, because my comfort zone had been pushed in those extreme temperatures. And that's another reason why I'm out here, out in the woods right now. In the city, it gets cold this time of year, obviously, and myself, I'm living out of my van by choice, and I find myself in these situations where, I'm trying to stay warm, Once I get off work, I gotta go find a Starbucks or something. I gotta sit in there and try to keep myself warm. I gotta go find a Barnes and Noble where I can sit down with my laptop, charge up and all that, and get away from these extreme temperatures, or these cold temperatures out here where my hands are cold all the time, where my feet are cold all the time. I end up having days where I'll get off work and my hands and feet are cold all the way up until I get in bed, or about an hour until I get in my sleeping bag, if I don't go find somewhere to get warm. But out here, I'm pushing myself out of my comfort zone by being out here, because there's no Barnes and Noble out here. There's no Starbucks I can go to charge up my laptop and keep myself warm. I'm not going to be able to sit here and run my van all day to keep it heated, to keep me comfortable. So what I'm doing, I'm getting myself acclimated to these cold temperatures, pushing myself outside of my comfort zone, pushing my threshold for dealing with cold. So when I do get to a point to where I go back to where it is warm, it's nothing. It's a piece of cake. It's easy. I'm so used to being cold anyway, so I get back to this place, I'm like, man, it's nice and toasty in here. That's part of pushing yourself, getting acclimated to situations that you aren't quite comfortable with. And that's what a lot of us don't do in society, and that's what leaves us in these positions that we don't want to be in, because we don't pursue things outside of what makes us comfortable. In my younger years, I was in a network marketing business. And one of the things that we used to do, we were taught by multimillionaires and people who were being trained by multimillionaires to do these presentations. And during these presentations, obviously what we have to do, we'd have to set up a dry erase board. We'd have to, do a presentation in front of X amount of people. So I used to have routinely 5, 6, people over at my apartment, put up the dry erase board, go through this presentation, have a good night, we'll talk afterwards, and that's that. If you want to get in, that's cool. If not, that's cool too. It's all good. So continuing that trend, I was mentored by these guys, these people who had gotten used to getting out of their comfort zone. I had sat in these seminars with these successful people. I've sat in multiple seminars, hours and hours of talks by Dr. John Maxwell. Even met him, got some books signed by him and everything. And, a leadership guru in his field, best-selling author. So getting around those people, that gave me an experience that, okay, I had done these talks in front of these smaller groups, and there was one point where, out of nowhere, you would do these presentations. If you know what you're talking about, it's no problem. So you can talk in front of 5 people, you can talk in front of 50 people. And something like that happened to me at one point. I was called to the front of the room by one of my mentors, because one of the guy that was giving the speech, he was running late. So I was called up to give a speech when they were expecting someone else that was higher on the totem pole, as it were, to come in and talk. And I would get up there and give the presentation on the spot because they had asked me to do that. And afterwards, halfway through, Lynn Burnett, the guy who was gonna be doing the talk, he showed up, and I did the presentation. And at the end, when I was done, he came up, shook my hand, patted me on the back, said I did a great job. And I pushed myself out of my comfort zone, or I was pushed out of my comfort zone. I was forced beyond my normal limitations of 5, 6 to 12 people in my apartment to being in front of like 50 people. And that expanded me to a point to where when I got to the conference, skipping ahead here, what you have to do in life to get to where you want to go, to get outside of your comfort zone, you got to push your limits. That's what I'm doing here, or you'll have your limits pushed for you. That's what happened to me at that meeting when I was called up on the spot to give that presentation in front of those people, when they were expecting somebody bigger and more successful, more important than myself to come out there and talk. So that's what happened here. You have to push your limits, and a lot of people don't do that because of fear. Now, there was a movie, After Earth. Will Smith was in that one, and he was talking to his son. He said, son, fear. He talked about fear right there. He said that danger is real. Fear is a choice. And you realize that. You've realized that in certain situations that you've found yourself in, where you built something up. This scenario inside your head was so bad, it was so scary that you almost just, forgot everything and ran. But you realized afterwards it was just false evidence appearing real. That's what fear is. That's all fear is. That's all fear has ever been. So what happened, I had got pushed so far back then that it really wasn't a big deal when it was time to go in front of everybody at the Flat Earth Conference. What happened, I'm upstairs, I'm listening to music, I'm, getting myself amped up, listening to Tech N9ne, I got my headphones on, I'm trying to get in my zone, trying to get hyped so I can get on stage to do this thing. I'm giving myself a pep talk. You can do this. You've done this before. Not to this magnitude, not to so many people, not to these news cameras, the media and all that, not in front of people doing a live stream all across the world. No, I hadn't done it to that degree, but because I had spoken in front of 50 people at one point, 500 people, what's the difference? Just a few more faces. Okay, fine. But I was ready because I had pushed myself and been pushed outside of my comfort zone at that point, and I realized that fear, it's an illusion. Fear is an illusion, and that's what it is. I was ready. I had sat in those seminars and listened to those successful people. I had read those books by John Maxwell. I had listened to the CDs and tapes and watched DVDs and been to all these speeches and seminars and all that. So I was ready inside my mind to go out and do it back then, and I remembered all those events from before, and I just carried it over. So people were like, "What? How's this guy? Who is this guy to go doing this talk? This guy with braids and a t-shirt doing a talk in front of like 500 people?" I had already had training. I was ready. I was outside of my comfort zone, and when it was time to get up on stage, I had already amped myself up, and I was ready to go. And that's what it was, And what happens when you step outside of your comfort zone, when you pushed outside of your comfort zone, you don't even have to be out there for very long, just long enough to get that experience, get past the fear. And with that fear, you realize once you face it down, you get on the other side of that fear and you realize it was paper thin. It was nothing. It was nowhere near as bad as you thought that it was going to be. You step outside of your comfort zone, and when you get back in, you realize that you've expanded your comfort zone by virtue of having the courage to step outside of it in the first place. And when you get back in there, you realize that you can do more. And at that point, when a new task, a new mission, a new assignment of some sort is presented to you, you will say to yourself, in remembrance of what you've already accomplished in your life, you will say 4 of the most empowering words that a human being can say to themselves. I can do that. And that's when you believe in yourself, because you can look back at these things. You remember when you were on top of your game and you faced down that fear and you were already in a similar situation. So you can say to yourself, I can do that. And you get out there and you get it done, and you can make this happen. So I want you to believe in yourself. I want you to have the courage to step out of your comfort zone and do some things that you aren't quite familiar with, some things that you aren't quite used to. And once you face those things down, you'll be able to say to yourself that I can do that. I want you to believe in yourself because I believe in you. And that's all I got for this one. Thanks for tuning in. As always, be good to each other. Take care of yourself. Stay flat. I'll see you next time. Thank you.